Okay, good afternoon everyone. My name's Claire Walter. I work in policy research and public health and policy research at the newly formed Climate Catch Lab at the University of Melbourne and also at the Climate and Health Alliance. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we are on, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, both past, present and emerging. Today's session is focused on health, and we have three excellent speakers who will be talking for 7 minutes each before we then open up to the floor for a Q&A session. Our speakers are Amanda Bresnan from Asthma Australia, sitting in the middle there, and Amanda will be talking about indoor air quality and asthma. She'll be followed by Dr. Genevieve Cowie. Genevieve is a public health physician and is also working for Doctors for the Environment. And Genevieve will be talking about health impacts of indoor air quality and gas use in the home. And finally, we have Dr. Monique Ryan, who is a paediatric neurologist and, as most of you know, the current federal member for Kooyong. And Monique will be talking to us about the government's role in regulating or in protecting the public through regulation and public health messaging. I've given you very scanty bios for our speakers. The full ones are on the website for this event. And without further ado, I'd like to ask Amanda to please start us off.
Great, thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge we're meeting on the lands of Aboriginal people here today, and as was and always will be Aboriginal land, sovereignty has never been ceded. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold. Just a bit of a background on Asthma Australia. We're the peak consumer organisation representing consumers' asthma in Australia. About 2.7 million people in Australia have asthma. It's currently the 8th burden of disease. It's unfortunately increasing, and it's the highest burden of disease in terms of prevalence in children, which is why this issue of gas cooking is something which is so important to Asthma Australia. We see housing as a social determinant of health. It's particularly important for people with asthma, as housing conditions have a significant influence on an individual's asthma, and that's just not from triggering it, but also increasing its severity. The type of energy used in homes contributes to the health of the indoor air quality. Energy sources such as gas and wood, so that's also an issue for us, emit harmful pollutants, and as I said, they can trigger symptoms and they can also cause the development of asthma, and again, particularly with children. We know that gas cooking is a concern for human health, particularly asthma. Burning gas during cooking produces air pollutants that, when breathed in, can trigger flare-ups and contribute to asthma. Cooking with gas is estimated to be responsible for up to 12% of childhood asthma burden in Australia, which is quite significant. Gas appliances also contribute to climate change as they release methane, which is 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide and adds to the burden. And we also know that climate change as well is impacting on the health of people itself and on asthma, and prolonged bushfires, heavy rainfall events expose people to air pollution, including mould, that are incredibly dangerous. Children, as I said, are likely to be affected by exposure to gas from cooking. They spend up to 75% of their time at home, meaning they're exposed to a range of triggers in the home. Electricity-powered homes can help improve both indoor and outdoor air quality, particularly when using energy sourced from renewable sources and have high energy efficiency and reduced consumer costs than either gas or wood. Asthma Australia strongly supports a transition to residential electrification across Australia, particularly one powered by renewable energy with support for households on low incomes. We were very pleased to see the proposal developed by Allegra Spender and supported by independent members of Parliament, including Dr. Monique Ryan here today, to provide tax incentives to property owners for rentals. Because I think, as people said in the previous talk, people who don't have the means to be able to make the changes to the home particularly need assistance. And this was one of the things that bore out we did a significant survey at the end of 2022, which looked into research into homes, health and asthma. 3 in 10 respondents with asthma reported their symptoms were worse when they're at home, and many people were using gas cooktops. People who didn't own their own home reported they're afraid to report it because of any repercussions that might happen with landlords. We are also calling for a federal parliamentary inquiry into this issue, into homes, health and the environment, because it's about empowering people to be able to make those changes. Everyone has the right to live in a healthy home. If the energy sources they're using in their home are impacting their health, then we need to absolutely address that.
Thank you, Amanda. That's fantastic. We'll do questions at the end of all three speakers. So I'd like to ask now Dr. Genevieve Cowie. Take it away.
Thanks very much, Claire. Okay, so obviously, as Amanda's been talking about, burning carbon in your house is, generally speaking, a bad idea. It leads to the products of combustion inside your house. Along with that, of course, particularly with naked flames, there's a risk of fires and burns, of course, that come with that. Combustion, burning carbon inside your house produces a complex mix of chemicals, and essentially they're not compatible with modern, tightly sealed houses. And as Amanda's been saying, the risks to health and safety are unfairly distributed. There's a large social justice piece amongst all of this, meaning that those with less means and renters are less able to change their risky appliances or get them serviced. Younger children are closer to stoves and spend more time at home, and their developing bodies are sensitive to the effect of all these chemicals. And gas more generally has been associated with developmental delays in children, so that is slower brain and behaviour development in children. Also, of course, older people and those who already have heart and lung disease are more at risk. The toxic chemicals produced include NOx, so that is nitrous oxide and nitrogen dioxide, which is potent airway irritant. So that's in addition to all the effects with asthma. Fine particulate matter, so that's the PM 2.5 that you would have heard about with bushfires, as well as ultrafine particles. As well as asthma, it is involved in the development and exacerbation of chronic lung disease in adults. Heart disease, of course, premature death in people with heart or lung disease, and wider effects on the body. So that would be things that you wouldn't expect, like diabetes, dementia, and poor pregnancy outcomes. Formaldehyde is another one of the chemicals produced. That's a volatile organic compound. These are things you shouldn't breathe in. It's highly toxic. It's easily inhaled. It irritates the airways, the eyes and the skin, and is a known carcinogen, so it's known to cause cancer. There's also polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons there, similarly cancer, heart and circulatory diseases, and poor development of unborn babies. However, the most immediately dangerous of all the chemicals that are produced from burning carbon inside your house is carbon monoxide. It's odourless and colourless. It's a product of incomplete burning of carbon, so particularly if your appliances aren't functioning correctly. The symptoms of poisoning are non-specific, so that makes it very challenging to actually diagnose. So there's things like headache, nausea and vomiting, skin flushing and muscle pain, weakness, short of breath, and as it gets more serious and the greater concentrations, dizziness, coordination problems, confusion, chest pain and death. And at high concentrations, death can be very quick, like within a few minutes. There's also at very low levels, so levels that are too low to be detected by carbon monoxide alarms, there's permanent nerve and brain damage can occur. Of course, with those kind of vague symptoms, that means it's often not suspected either by household occupants or health professionals who are trying to sort out what the problem is. So look for things like feeling sick only when you're at home and people and pets being sick at the same time in the house. And of course, it's likely to be more common than actual documented cases of carbon monoxide poisoning. It's quite difficult to document these. Notably, any gas appliance can become faulty and spill carbon monoxide, even central heating if it's not functioning correctly. Unflued and open flued gas heaters are the most risky. And there's an explanation of particularly why open flued heaters are risky on the Energy Safe Victoria website. So it's slightly complicated as how that works. Notably, new open flued gas heaters must meet a new standard so that they will shut down automatically if they spill carbon monoxide for more than 15 minutes. And of course, at high levels of carbon monoxide, 15 minutes is way too long. So that's a challenge. It's very important to get gas appliances serviced, particularly heaters, serviced every 2 years. And notably, those who can't afford it are more likely to have older, more dangerous heaters and are less likely to have them serviced. Of course, burning carbon contributes to local air pollution, which reduces local air quality conditions for you and your neighbours. It's also worsened by local weather conditions, so it's particularly temperature inversions. And in Melbourne, they happen at certain times of the year, and in some areas, of course, they are particularly prone to frequent temperature inversions. Notably, and of course, more widely, as Amanda said, this burning gas helps fuel climate change, which is a massive health issue, as well as an environmental and everything else issue. But also remember that fossil gas that we use in our homes is mostly methane, which is in itself a powerful greenhouse gas. Now, notably, you'll think, oh, that's okay, we'll just make sure we use the exhausts in the homes. It's quite complicated with how that works effectively with gas appliances. So the exhausts may not be present at all. So that would be unflued gas heaters, which I sincerely hope none of you have or are using in your houses. They're dangerous. Range hoods over your gas stove. They're often not used because they're noisy, or they don't actually exhaust to the outside of the house. They're just sort of taking off some of the larger particulate matter and then putting the air straight back into the house. They can also be made ineffective by exhaust fans functioning elsewhere in the house, like in a bathroom, as they can suck pollutants back into the house rather than going up the range hood or other flue for a heater. And notably, stoves may also leak gas even when they're off. So using exhausts for gas in the house are important if they're used correctly, but they don't eliminate the risk, even if they're used properly and functioning correctly. So to staying safe in the home with gas, obviously get off gas appliances when you can and use renewable electricity options where possible. Improve the ventilation in your home. Open a window even a little bit whilst you're cooking will help. Use a plug-in induction stove, so you don't need to have a full new induction cooktop to actually move to induction cooking and away from gas. Check for safety alerts for your heater, particularly, you can do this via the Energy Safe Victoria website. You can look for your particular model of heater. Get your gas heating serviced at least 2 yearly by a licensed Type A gas fitter, and that includes testing for carbon monoxide leakage. They have to have a specific monitor thing for that. Look for changes in appliance operation, so look for changes in flame colour, or popping from your gas appliance. Sleep safely. Don't leave your gas heater on at night time, even the central heating. You may never wake up. Consider carbon monoxide alarms and look for the US or the European Union standard on that, because there isn't an Australian one. Install them correctly, and remember they can only ever be a backup measure. And never use outdoor barbecues and heaters inside. They're not made for it and they're not vented properly. Yes, I could go on, but I'll leave it there for the moment.
So incredibly helpful tips. I didn't want to stop them because I was listening very carefully myself to what I need to do. I'd like to now ask Dr. Monique Rahn to please fill us in on the government's role in helping protect us.
Well, I mean, I think with what we've heard just in the last 15 minutes or so has been very, it's a bit confronting, I think, to listen to these sorts of things. I think many of us worry about, one of the things about politicians is not talking about this in a way that makes people feel a bit guilty about what we've got in their own homes. I still have a gas cooktop in my own home. And I know that many of us, when we're faced with these sorts of facts, find it a bit difficult because many people are in a position where they can't make the switch from gas to electrification of their home, even when they really, really want to. And that's where the politicians basically come in. And I think it's a really significant responsibility of politicians in this country now to help people make this switch, knowing what we do. And I have to say, when I renovated my home 10 plus years ago, I had no idea about these sorts of concerns about the potential impact for my family members. And so I suppose that's the first thing to say, is to acknowledge the fact that this is new information for many of us, and for some people it's difficult to hear. And it's extremely important that people not feel bad about the fact that we have these appliances in our homes, because the reality was that we've all come to a realisation about these concerns in recent times. And the challenge for us now is to act on that knowledge, to act on the scientific knowledge, the medical research, and help all Australians to make a switch to a safer home environment. I'd also say a safer school environment. So what can we do to do that? The government needs to help people to make that switch. But that's the levers for that are, like many of the sorts of wicked issues that we're grappling with as a society at the moment, multifactorial. So there's stuff that can be done at a local government level, at a state government level, and a federal government level. The common theme there, though, is that people have the ability to put pressure on their governments, on politicians, to take action in the way that we need to do. And so one of the things I try to get people is to get people involved in putting pressure on the local government to change laws, state governments to do that, and federal governments to put the things in place to help them to do that. So what we need to do is it's a pretty significant task. There's more Victorian households on gas than any other state or territory in Australia. And we have a somewhat confronting figure that 200 Victorian households a day have to convert off gas for us to be a zero gas household state by 2050. And anyone who's tried to call a tradie recently knows it's not easy, even if you've got the cash and you're ready to go, to find someone to do that for you right now. So there's lots and lots of challenges there. But what the government can do is put in place both carrots and sticks to facilitate that change. And so the states of the state and territory governments across Australia need to put in laws that stop new gas connections in new builds. And they have to find the political will and money to change all of the public housing, social housing and Indigenous housing over from gas to electricity. And then they have to, I believe, and on one of the crossbench, we're all on the same page about this. We have to follow the advice of the experts, and we have to stop selling new gas appliances in Australia. These are three of the things that we can do. As Amanda said, one of the concerns we have at a federal level is that it's really easy to tell householders what to do, and we can put in place things that will help householders make that change. We can give them rebates, we can give them tax offsets and the like. But one of the groups of people who are in a particularly difficult situation are renters. So housing affordability and availability in Australia is at a record peak of difficulty, and there's a housing crisis. 1/3 of Australians rent, and those renters are largely powerless when it comes to, at this point in time, asking for upgrades to their homes, because many people are telling us that they're already struggling with their rents increasing really significantly, and if they ask for any capital improvements to the properties that they're renting, then basically they get moved on. So what the government needs to do, and what the Independents, Allegra Spender led this week, has come up with a proposal to help people who own homes and are renting them out, or apartments and renting them out, to make that change. So at the moment you can depreciate appliances over 10 to 12 years. The proposal that we had was that you can depreciate them immediately. You can immediately offset them on your tax. And so what that will do is, if those homeowners pick that up and they transition their appliances straight away, yes, it'll improve the strength, the health of the homeowners, but it'll also save the average renter between $500 and $1,600 a year on their gas costs. Anyone who's paying gas bills at the moment knows what a horrible moment that is when you open that one up. So that's something that's practical, which will help people who own homes and people, the landlords, but it will also help renters significantly. It will cost $50 million a year, which is at a federal level, I hate to tell you this, a relatively modest amount of money. So that's something that we came up with last week, but we didn't come up with it on our own. This is the other thing we need to do, that proposal first came from the Grattan Institute. And so one thing that I tell people is that, the people in government who care about these things, like the independents and some and the Greens and some other members of the major parties, we don't come up with these ideas ourselves in a vacuum. We have to listen to the experts. So we listen to the Grattan Institute, we listen to the Climate Council, we listen to ACF, or to a whole lot of other expert groups who look at the tax system, look at housing, and look at ways that we can make significant changes over time. People only do that. The government will only respond to that sort of thing if people are hearing from their own electorates that it's important to the voters. Politicians are very, very shallow people, and we respond to the power of people calling us up and saying, or pulling us up in the street and saying, well, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about this? So it comes with a groundswell from people saying, I'm really concerned about my child's health. My child has asthma and they've been to hospital 3 times this year. What are you going to do about it? Because I know that having gas in my home is not ideal, but I'm not in a position where I can make that switch right now. What are you going to do to help me? If politicians hear that every single day, they will take action, but people do need to hear it, because there's a lot of people telling you about their concerns, or, there's lots of different concerns that are raised to politicians every single day that we're out in the street. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. If we're hearing about this all day, every day, then we will take action. There's lots of things that can be done, and the science is there. There's lots of reports that tell us what changes we can make which can help people electrify their homes. But it will take a bit of impetus from the voters to tell their local members that this is important to them at a local government, a state government and a federal level.
Thank you. I had a lot of questions as you were going along, but you actually answered most of them by the time you got to the end. So I'm going to kick off with one question, and then we've got a roving mic that will be going around the audience. So in the meantime, if anyone has any questions, raise your hands. My first question: if Victoria transitions from gas the way we hope that it might, the best possible trajectory, I imagine there'll be some, I don't know if it's fear-mongering or whether it's well-founded concerns regarding energy security and energy supply. Do you have any comments on that, and any three of you from your backgrounds?
It's a tough one.
I think that's probably more for me, but I didn't want to rule out.
All the time, and in fact, unfortunately, I missed the last session, but I think Bruce Mountain was probably talking about this to some extent as well. Yeah, there are concerns about our energy supply. Of course there are, and it's really, really important that we make sure that the transition is made in such a way that we have the infrastructure that we need to have, so that people can access electricity 24/7 and have security around that. And that does take a commitment as well. There are adjustments that people need to make in making that transition. There's a lot of pushback at the moment in the Rewiring Australia plan from various people who have to have poles and wires put in place on their properties. That is a conversation that we need to have, and we need people to come on board and understand the importance of that. We need to support those landowners in making the adjustment, or looking at other ways of doing the same sort of thing. But basically, what at a federal level, what you hear a lot is, this is unreasonable. You're putting an imposition on people whose homes, lands, properties are being affected by the Rewiring the Australia plan and the many, many thousands of kilometres of poles and wires that need to be put in place to do that. There are alternative ways of doing it. But the first thing to do is you have to come to an acceptance that we need to do this. This is a commitment that we have to have. And the vast majority of that energy transition will be in electrification, but then there's other bits to it as well, whether we're talking about hydro or hydrogen or other forms of energy production and supply and storage. But the first bit is everyone getting on board to say, no, this is really, really important. We have to get off gas and coal. And it's very difficult at the moment because there's so much static in that space about people saying, no, we need to keep the gas and coal going. And then other people popping up and saying, have you thought about nuclear? You know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
can we just not? Actually, unfortunately, at a federal level, you can't say, can we just not? It just doesn't work very well. It doesn't sort of... but, you know, you have to have everyone on page with the beginning of it, which is that we need to make this transition off gas and coal, and we need to do it as soon as possible. And that, at a federal level, that is still a significant challenge, unfortunately.
And I was just going to add, I think the point was made in the last session as well about, and so yes, that's the first point, everyone has to be on board with it, but actually about recognising the full costs of not doing it. Yeah. I think that point was made is about what are the health impacts, what are the other, because I think that, for us particularly, it's been lost, and when we raise things about ASRA and health, and as raised with the points you made, it's like, it is quite shocking to people, but it is actually a part of that full picture and the costs that need to be taken into account, because there's more than just the actual infrastructure costs, and there's all these other things if you don't do it.
Yep.
I think we have someone down here first.
Hi, Glenys Jones. We've been off gas for 2 years, and I can completely agree with the fact that you save money, and it's wonderful not having to open that winter gas bill. The concern I have is watching the television and what have you, and seeing these misleading gas industry ads with the dad doing the cooking and the little kid getting in the bubble bath. It doesn't paint the reality of how dangerous this product is. And additionally, having made the transition over a number of years, like when we renovated the kitchen, we did the induction, when our hot water was about to die, we did the hot water service, and then we got rid of the ducted heating. Every time a gas appliance is installed, it is delaying the transition in that house for 10 to 20 years. So how do we stop this misinformation through the gas industry?
Everyone keeps looking at me. It's so interesting. So on Sunday nights, everyone flies into Canberra, and there's the ads in the airport that change. And every especially in winter, you arrive and there are these beautiful photos and of people having natural gas, cooking with their natural gas, and so happy to be cooking with their natural gas. It's like actually, people, it's methane. That's a genius calling it liquefied natural gas, really. But and we're all used to the whole cooking with gas thing. Yeah, it is a gradual transition that needs to be made. But I think basically the state governments need to ban the sale of new gas appliances, as you say, because there's a tail end, and that a gas appliance sold and installed today will be there for 10 or 15 years at least, most likely. So there is a problem there. There's a real cost there. So we need to just stop selling them. But that again takes significant cojones from the state governments to make that decision. But also we need to give people an affordable alternative. So the other thing that we can do is we could make the other appliances just much cheaper, either via subsidies or by low-cost loans or whatever for the purpose of those sorts of things. There are lots of different levers you can pull, but it is a state government issue, that one, and it does have to be sort of addressed as a matter of urgency.
Can I just say something?
Oh, sorry, just Genevieve's just going to say one more thing, and then
At a really fundamental level, we need to take away the social licence of the fossil fuel industry. Okay, so all that stuff, the cooking with gas, we've grown up on it. It's time to move on. There's a thing in public health advocacy called the scream test. You're getting to them if they're putting on the big ads and all that kind of stuff. The more fuss you get from them, you're getting to them. We've got to work harder. That stuff from the fossil fuel industry, all the spin stuff about how beautiful and warm natural gas is, and how people are very fond of their gas cooktops and can't imagine living without them. We need to get past that. So there's a whole big sort of public education, information, hearts and minds stuff behind all of this, and stopping the fossil fuel industry advocating lies would be helpful.
And Amanda's just going to add a comment, and then we're down to the young lad
Yes, just quickly, when we put out our report into the housing survey, and because gas was the top line issue, that we got attacked by the gas company. I think similarly we took that as a badge of honour, because basically for us, it doesn't matter what the source of energy is. If it's impacting people's health and it's increasing the asthma burden, we don't make any apologies for actually saying that people need to be getting off gas. And a lot of it too is, and Dr. Monique Ryan would see this being in Parliament, is that lobbying power, and they have a lot of power. So it does take, I think it will take a lot of political courage to actually stand up to that. And even for us as a health NGO, we got really attacked by them in certain parts of the media. We just thought, well, we don't make any apologies for that. So it will take, I think, like you said, that we just have to keep saying it and not be afraid to say it, and hope more people do that.
Now, who knows, hopefully in time there'll be some sort of opportunity through greenwashing and corporate responsibility, ESG governance, some more opportunities on that angle as well. Now, please. Oh.
Hello? So my name is Albert, and I was just going to ask, hopefully you haven't already answered this, are you implying that we should throw out our gas appliances, like throw them in the bin now?
Do you want me to?
Yeah, I can have a go. I'd say as soon as you can is the bearing in mind that there is a big thing here, a whole big discussion about the difficulties it is for people to change those appliances, which have long service lives. So they're going to be in use for a long time if you install a new one now. So as soon as people can afford it, they should do it, and there needs to be help for people that can't afford to do it. They're the ones most affected. I would say in Victoria, the renters, rental properties have to have a properly documented safety test for both their gas and electrical appliances every 2 years. So renters, you should be getting written confirmation that is happening, and demand to make sure that it is happening, because that is a legal requirement for that to happen at this stage, and that's because people have died.
Yeah, and carbon monoxide monitors, I think, was a real take-home. Although you can't rely on them.
But you can't rely on them,
yeah.
So there'll still be damage can happen at lower levels of carbon monoxide. But yes, that is one thing that you certainly can do. And that costs about $50.
Yeah, there are state government rebates that people can use as well, so definitely look into that around hot water and heating. So, but as you see, like we've been saying, the more people the more that get installed, the harder it becomes. So if people can afford to do it, they should do it.
This lady's been patiently waiting. Could someone get the mic over?
Hello. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I particularly want to ask, you're involved with the Asthma Australia, is that correct? So, and you said there's a significant number of asthmatics in Australia. Are they being motivated to represent their issues to government? Does Asthma Australia, are they able to do that? Or are people who have cardiac disease, lung disease, there's Lung Health Australia as well, Asthma Australia, there'd be Cardiac Australia or something? I don't know what that group is, but are they all being activated to make communicate, with their local politicians, their politicians at the 3 levels of government?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for us, as I said, we're the peak consumer organisation, so in terms of we're representing the people who have asthma themselves. So we're met with Dr. Monique Ryan a number of times, but that's why we also produce the surveys I talked about, so that we're producing the information that consumers are actually stating and using that. We're also part of a Lung Health Alliance, so we work with the Lung Foundation, Thoracic Society. We're a member of the Climate and Health Alliance as well. We input into any submissions we can put into parliamentary inquiries. There's currently an inquiry into residential electrification, so we put a submission to that. We ran a Parliamentary Friends event in February, which was about the report and very much focused on gas cooking. So any opportunity we can, we are doing that, plus also advocating in terms of the types of funds, particularly we talked about for people who don't have the means, because for us that's that really next step. For people who can afford it, that's fine, but for people who can't actually do that, and I think we've seen it sort of recently in Victoria with the public housing towers, that's a massive challenge to actually do that. So, but if we can provide people with the means, whether it's air purifiers or particular appliances, or that they can actually make changes now. So we very strongly advocate for those things. So yes, we're up there saying it ad nauseum, I can assure you.
I'd like to add just something. Since 2013, I have been working with most of the health organisations, trying to engage them and get them on board. I used to work at Peter Mac. When I found out about air pollution and lung cancer, it was a bit of a revelation, but it was a long uphill battle, and a lot of the foundations took a long time, but they are sort of, the tide has turned. But, I remember one of them saying, diesel's not a problem in Australia. I'm not going to throw any foundations under the bus, but I will say the Lung Foundation and then Asthma Australia came on board fairly quickly. I suppose lungs is the first port of call for air pollution or, the health impacts. But some of the other foundations where the next impacts lie took a little longer, but the tide certainly turned. And this year, every year I produce a document, and sort of as a litmus test, the number of organisations that endorse it grows each year. And this year I noticed really, it's becoming much more mainstream, and a lot of these organisations are devoting their advocacy and funds towards these issues, which is great.
Graham Ellis, probably to Monique. You mentioned about an immediate offset on your tax if you're changing a gas to an electric appliance. Offset, is that the best way to organise it? Isn't it possible that people are on paying a low income tax rate aren't going to gain very much from that? Is perhaps a rebate a more appropriate arrangement?
Yeah, but potentially something like that. It could be related to what people's tax burden is. But yeah, it's essentially the same sort of thing, I think. It essentially means that the proposal that we put up this week was particularly for landlords, for rental properties. But the same sort of thing could, as you say, could apply to homeowners as well for their own properties by giving them either a rebate or a tax offset. So, yeah.
And there are some rebates there now, but I think as Dr. Monique Ryan said, it's the issue for renters is particularly important. That's why we're really pleased to see this particular initiative looking at that. But yes, there's a whole range of things that need to be done for homeowners and renters.
I think this might be our last question. So down the back.
Given the incredible power and money that these big organisations have, and then people like yourselves pointing out the dangers of these things, but they're not really going to listen unless it affects them financially. So is there any litigation, class action type of thing that Asper Foundation or those sorts of organisations can help start? I mean, they're putting a toxin into people's homes. It's now known that that's the case. How is someone allowed to continue putting a toxin into homes? And so therefore litigation.
Yes, it's not something we've considered, obviously, but I think you're absolutely right. And I said when we produced our report and we got attacked for doing that, I know we've all said this, but it's one of those things where we literally just have to keep saying the issue. And I think, as has been talked about, there's more health groups have come on board, in particular in terms of our sector, about talking about this. I think it'd be great to see the Heart Foundation, even Alzheimer's, those groups getting more involved, because that's also a part of it. I do think though, even if, hypothetically, if you were to do litigation, it's a very expensive exercise, and I think for us it's about putting the pressure back on the health organisations, consumers to have to drive this. I mean, I think I would again say I think that political will encourage to actually do this is where this needs to happen, because there are mechanisms. We've talked about there's tax mechanisms, there's rebates, there's change the type of, you can put in indoor air quality is starting to be raised in terms of having actual processes in place there, regulation, housing regulations, actually creating the mechanisms where changes have to happen. I think that was, we talked about, that stick and carrot approach. I think you have to do both, because we know with some things, particularly around housing design, sometimes often unless you actually put in place the standards to drive that change, it won't happen. So it's a very good point you make about litigation. I know it has happened in the past, probably particularly in the US is where it's happened, but you know, I think we shouldn't be looking to cash-strapped not-for-profits to do it. I really think, you know, that political leadership, and then we're all there behind them, literally saying, do this. So
it costs a lot of money.
Yes.
That kind of thing. And there are people like advocacy groups like Environmental Justice Australia. They're the ones that are, you know, bringing all those sort of things together. But mostly it's about fossil fuel developments rather than the indoor air quality issues. You know, advocacy groups don't have the kind of money that fossil fuel industry does.
Yeah, my understanding, I have spoken to a few legal experts with some discrete projects where communities have been affected, but the legislation in Australia is quite difficult as well to approach with this sort of issue. It's expensive and it's difficult. It's not clearly worded. But I think there are certainly a few issues where we're almost reaching a point where we could be there, but certainly not with indoor appliances. We're not there yet with that respect. And I agree, it's a very costly exercise. It's very high risk. Okay, so the next session in this room, which is about to start in a couple of minutes, is I want to go solar. Where do I start? So if you're interested in that conversation, please stay. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.